She looked at me like I was an inconvenience. Not just old, but outdated, like a handwritten letter in a world of emails. I had shown up early to the parent-teacher meeting, the last one of the semester, and brought along a notebook with all of Clara's progress, or so I thought. Mrs. Langford didn't even invite me to sit. She just pointed to a chair, kept her arms folded, and sighed. Let's be honest, Mrs. Ellen Park. Right, she said, with that fake smile educators wear when they've already decided what the outcome should be. Let's be honest, Mrs. Park. Clara is not college material. My mouth dried up. I didn't even blink. She's 16, I said calmly, and grieving. She's disruptive, emotional, distracted. I know it's been hard since her parents. She paused, like the word died might offend me. But the truth is, she's struggling to keep up, academically and socially. I kept nodding, slow and steady, like her words didn't feel like stones being stacked on my chest. I had spent the last 7 years doing everything in my power to make sure Clara didn't crumble. Birthdays with just the two of us, empty chairs at recitals, sleepless nights when she had night terrors, and days when I'd skip my medication so I could afford her art supplies. She didn't know any of that. She didn't want to. Mrs. Langford closed the folder. College is competitive. Maybe a community program would be a better fit. I smiled, not because I agreed, but because I knew something she didn't. See, Clara isn't just my granddaughter. She's a spark, wild, unpredictable, but radiant. She paints like her mother and builds things like her father, people we buried too young, in the same week. She saw a problem. I saw a miracle with messy handwriting. I stood slowly. Arthritis makes everything a negotiation with gravity. I said, "Thank you for your time," turning to leave. "Mrs. Park," I stopped. "She's lucky to have you, you know. Not many would take all that on at your age." That part hurt more than the rest. As if my love came with an expiration date. I nodded and left before she could see my hands tremble. Outside, Clara waited on the steps, pretending to scroll on her phone, but I knew she was nervous. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "How bad was it?" she asked. I kissed the top of her head. "She doesn't know who you are yet, that's all." Clara looked confused, but I just smiled. Because what that teacher didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that I had spent my whole life getting back up after being counted out. And this time, it wasn't the one who'd rise. Clara would, and I'd be right behind her, holding the umbrella while she reached the storm's end. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Habit, I suppose. I've been rising early since Clara was a toddler, always needing something, a bottle, a story, or just someone to promise her the world hadn't gone anywhere. Now she's taller than me, with chipped black nail polish and notebooks full of poetry she hides under her mattress like I don't know. I brewed coffee in my old percolator, the one missing the lid. It wheezes when it starts, like it's clearing its throat before telling you a secret. I took my first sip and opened my drawer, the one I keep filled with folders labeled with dreams people have given up on. I added a new one, Clara College Pathways. I wasn't going to let Mrs. Langford decide her future. Clara came into the kitchen a little after 6, still in her oversized hoodie, socks mismatched. She looked at me, blinked, and reached for the coffee pot before I could stop her. "Not happening," I said, taking the pot and pointing to the orange juice instead. "You get caffeine when you get a scholarship." She smirked. "That's cruel. Cruel is giving up on yourself." She fell quiet, sipping juice like it tasted of regret. "I know I'm not good at school, Grandma." I looked at her hard. "You're not bad at school. You're bad at pretending you don't feel things." She stared down into her glass. "That's not a flaw, Clara. That's your power. You see things in people, and when the world tries to turn you into someone numb, you bleed anyway." She didn't speak, but her eyes shimmered in the morning light. I grabbed my notepad, the same one I used to track her childhood milestones. First steps, first fever, first time she asked if her mom could hear her when she whispered to the stars. I began writing down programs, deadlines, scholarships. I'd have to call the local library, maybe convince Mrs. Patel to let Clara use their printer after hours. Later that day, while Clara was at school, I went to the college fair alone. Yes, alone. No one expected a 70-year-old woman in orthopedic shoes to walk into that gymnasium and ask about enrollment, but I did. I spoke to counselors, jotted down brochures, and asked questions like I was applying myself. I stopped at the booth for Langdon State, the art school 2 counties over. A young man with a too white smile handed me a pamphlet. "Is your granddaughter thinking about applying?" I said, "She's going to. She just doesn't know it yet." He chuckled. "Well, tell her to reach out. We love passion projects." I raised a brow. "She's not a project. She's a revolution waiting for permission." He blinked, then nodded. "I'll remember that." As I walked out, wind biting at my scarf, I clutched the bag of brochures like they were bricks for the foundation I was about to lay. They'd written her off, but I was building something they couldn't erase. Clara was in her room when I got back, headphones on, sketching furiously in that spiral notebook with the frayed cover. Her legs were tucked underneath her like a bird nesting. I watched her from the doorway, unnoticed, just long enough to see the way her pencil moved, like she wasn't just drawing, but trying to make something breathe. I cleared my throat. She jumped. "Jesus, Grandma, you scared me." "Language," I did, entering Devaga with the Secola of the college. "And it's Ellen to you, young lady." She smiled, but her eyes darted to the bag. "What's that?" "Ammo." She blinked. I sat on the edge of her bed and pulled out the brochures one by one, laying them across the blanket like tarot cards. Langdon State, Coral Heights Academy, even one from the City College's dual enrollment program. I talked to their admissions teams. You meet the basic requirements, and some even have alternative portfolios for students who don't fit the usual mold. Clara stared at the colorful pamphlets like they were written in code. "I'm not ready for any of this," she whispered. "Mrs. Langford says I lack discipline, that I avoid hard things." I leaned closer. "You lost both your parents before your 10th birthday. You wake up alone every morning while your friends have rides and pack lunches and family game nights. And you still get up, still show up, and still dare to hope for more.
Don't tell me you lack discipline." Her mouth trembled. She didn't cry, though. She never does. I reached into my sweater pocket and handed her something folded. A letter, old and yellowed at the edges. She opened it gently, recognizing her mother's handwriting immediately. "To my Clara, for when I'm not there to remind you who you are." She read in silence, her hands shaking, her lips moving just barely as her mother's words poured through her. When she finished, she pressed the paper to her chest like a wound that finally had a bandage. "I forgot about this," she said, voice cracked. I didn't. I let her sit with it for a while before saying the next port. "I think you should apply to Langdon, and I think we should start building your portfolio." Her head snapped up. "You think I'm good enough?" I smiled. "No, I know you are." We spent the next 2 hours scanning her sketches, photographing her paintings, even pulling old projects from the attic. I made a list of potential mentors and called Mrs. Patel at the library to reserve the scanner. That night, Clara left her door open. I took that as a thank you. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan hum its slow lullaby, I thought about the battles I had fought in my life. But this one felt different. This one wasn't about proving myself. It was about protecting the spark in someone else, and I wouldn't let the world blow it out.
The first rejection came 2 weeks later. Not from a college, from the school art committee. Clara had submitted a piece to be featured in the spring gallery. A watercolor she poured her soul into. It was moody, abstract, the kind of painting that asks more questions than it answers. I thought it was breathtaking. But when the results were posted, her name wasn't on the list. She didn't say anything when she got home, just dropped her backpack, nodded at me, and went straight to her room. No music, no sketchbook, just silence. By the time I knocked on her door, it was almost 9. She was curled in bed, eyes open, staring at nothing. They picked Jamie's piece, she said, the one of the fruit bowl. It looks like a stock photo. I sat beside her. That's because Jamie paints for approval. You paint to feel something. They don't care, she whispered. No one wants messy. They want safe. I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. They'll catch up, I said, but until then, we keep moving. She looked at me, tears balanced on her lashes. Why do you even care so much? It wasn't the first time she asked, but tonight I answered differently. Because when your mother died, I didn't just lose my daughter. I inherited her fire, and I made a promise that I wouldn't let the world turn her child into ash. She didn't cry. She never does. But she sat up and let me hold her. The next morning, I packed a lunch for her. Not the usual sandwich and juice, but a handwritten letter folded inside a brown paper bag. She found it at lunch and sent me a picture of the note later that afternoon. They can't see you yet. That's not your fault. Some stars don't appear until the sky is dark enough. Keep burning. She drew a tiny comet under it before snapping the photo. That weekend, we started working on her Langdon portfolio. The art school required a mix of traditional and experimental work. Clara resisted the traditional parts, still lives, perspective sketches, but I made a deal. For every fruit bowl you draw, you get to paint a storm. She smirked. Deal. I watched her come alive again. We filled the dining table with paper, smudged charcoal into the wood, spilled ink on the runner.
My little house became a war zone of color and creation. I didn't care. Let it stain. Let it screen. I'd rather live in chaos than let her dim. One night, after hours of painting, she whispered, "I think Mom would be proud." I smiled without looking up. She always was. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, my granddaughter was beginning to believe in herself again. And belief, that stubborn, flickering thing, is louder than any rejection, especially when someone's standing beside you, shielding the flame.
We mailed the portfolio on a Tuesday. Clara sealed the envelope herself, pressing down the flap with both palms like she was blessing it. I watched her walk it to the mailbox in her paint-stained hoodie and mismatched sneakers. She stood there for a second before sliding it through the slot, then turned back to me with a face I'll never forget. Hopeful, terrified, alive. That night, I made chicken pot pie. She lit a candle at dinner, said it was for good energy. I didn't argue. I even poured us both ginger ale in wine glasses. "Cheers to messy dreams," I said. She clinked hers against mine, and old ladies who don't give up. I laughed so hard I almost choked. The next few weeks were slow and electric all at once. Clara started drawing again without me asking. She cleaned her room, sort of, and one night she left a tiny sketch on my pillow, a woman holding a small sun in her hands, shielding it from the wind. I kept it in my wallet. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. But it wasn't from Langdon. It was from the school. A formal note from Mrs. Langford summoning me to a meeting about Clara's concerning academic trajectory. I called the number on the bottom and confirmed. Yes, I'll be there. And no, I won't be alone. Clara didn't want me to go. "It'll just make things worse," she said. "She already thinks I'm some charity case." She's wrong, and it's time someone told her so. The meeting was set for Friday at 10 a.m. I wore my nicest sweater and brought a folder of Clara's recent work, scholarship eligibility papers, and a copy of the letter we'd sent to Langdon. When I entered the room, Mrs. Langford was already seated. 2 other staff members flanked her, the counselor, Ms. Brighton, and the vice principal, Mr. Jameson. "Mrs. Park," she greeted, not even standing. "Ellen," I corrected, sitting down. "Let's not pretend we don't know each other." She smiled thinly. "We're concerned Clara isn't on a path that aligns with realistic outcomes." "I submitted a college portfolio last month," I said, placing the copy on the table. She glanced at it like it might be contaminated. "Art school is a long shot. Her GPA is—" "She's grieving," I interrupted. "But you knew that already." Mrs. Brighton cleared her throat. "We understand the emotional challenges, but we're just trying to manage expectations." I leaned in. "Whose expectations? Yours or hers?" They didn't answer. I pulled out Clara's sketch, the one of the woman holding the sun in her hands, shielding it from the wind. "You don't see what she's carrying. You only see what she hasn't turned in on time." Silence. Then Mr. Jameson, the quiet one, said softly, "This is impressive." Mrs. Langford shifted in her seat. I stood up.
You may not believe in her, but I do. And one day you'll wish you had." I walked out without waiting for a response. Some people confuse authority with wisdom, but wisdom knows when to listen. And I had just spoken loud enough for the future to hear.
Clara was waiting on the porch when I got home. She wasn't sketching, wasn't reading, just sitting there with her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the mailbox like it held the meaning of life. I sat beside her, slowly, my knees cracking like old floorboards. "Well?" she asked, not looking at me. "She said you're unrealistic." Clara sighed, shoulders slumping. "But," I continued, "I told her something she won't forget." She glanced at me now. "Did you yell?" I smiled. "No, baby. I just held up your art like it was a mirror. She didn't like what she saw." Clara blinked, then gave a half smile. "Good." We sat there together, the porch creaking under our weight and the afternoon sun slipping down like butter on warm toast. A week passed, then another. No news from Langdon, no news from anywhere. But something else changed. Clara began leaving the door to her room open again. I'd pass by and see her painting without realizing I was watching. I didn't interrupt. Creation, I've learned, is a sacred kind of solitude. You don't knock, you wait for the artist to invite you in. On a rainy Wednesday, the phone rang, the landline, a sound so rare now it startled both of us. I picked it up. "Ellen Park speaking." A pause, then a warm, older voice with a hint of formality. "Mrs. Park, this is Dean Anthony Dela Cruz from Langdon." I stood before I knew why. "Yes," I said, my voice too tight. "I hope this isn't a bad time. I was hoping to speak with Clara, but since you're listed as her guardian, I thought I'd reach out to you first." I nodded into the receiver. "Of course. What is this regarding?" He chuckled. "I believe you already know. I've just finished reviewing her portfolio." I pressed the phone harder to my ear, as if that would make it more real. I wanted to say, he paused, and I could hear him smile. "Thank you for raising an artist." Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. "She's been shortlisted for a merit scholarship. We'll be sending an official letter by post, but I didn't want to wait to tell you. Her work has soul, rare these days." I choked out a thank you and promised to tell her. When I hung up, Clara was standing by the doorway. "You froze," she said. I walked over, took her hands, and whispered, "The Dean of Langdon just called. They loved your work." She gasped. "They're sending a letter, but they already said the word scholarship." Clara collapsed into my arms, trembling. For once, she didn't hold it in. She cried. I held her tight. No more pretending, no more second-guessing, no more shrinking. For the first time in a long time, my granddaughter, the one they said wasn't college material, believed she belonged somewhere, and that somewhere had just opened its doors. The letter arrived 3 days later. Cream-colored envelope, thick like wedding stationery, embossed with Langdon State seal in gold. Clara wouldn't open it, just stared at it like it might vanish if she touched it the wrong way. So I opened it for her, slow and careful, the way you unwrap something fragile. She sat at the kitchen table, chin in her hands, elbows on her knees. I read it aloud. Dear Clara Park, we are thrilled to inform you that your portfolio has earned you a place in the entering class of 2026 at Langdon State College of the Arts, with a merit-based scholarship covering 75% of tuition. Clara gasped. I kept going, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. When I finished, she didn't speak, just reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I don't think I know how to be happy, she said softly. I squeezed her fingers. It's like riding a bike. You wobble a bit, but it comes back. We laughed through the tears. Later that night, I found her sitting in the hallway flipping through old photos, ones with her parents, Christmas mornings, birthday candles, her dad carrying her on his shoulders at the zoo. She looked up at me. Do you think they'd be proud? I didn't hesitate. They'd be racked with pride. She nodded and went back to the photos, but not with sadness, with reverence, like she was letting them witness what they couldn't from this side of the veil. The next morning, the school posted the gallery lineup. Clara's name was on it. Her piece, the one they'd rejected earlier? Apparently, the art teacher had submitted it again after seeing her portfolio, said it deserved a second look. Clara rolled her eyes when she told me, but I saw the flush in her cheeks. Recognition always comes late for people who walk ahead of their time. That same week, I got another phone call, this time from the school board. Turns out, Mrs. Langford's conduct had been flagged in multiple parent reports, not just mine. Coldness, discouragement, dismissive remarks. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't feel sorry either. Some people learn by watching others rise without their permission. Clara spent the rest of the month working on her graduation speech. Yes, speech. She'd been selected as one of the speakers for her class's senior send-off. They said her essay on grief and identity moved the panel to tears. She told me she wasn't sure what to say. I told her to speak the way she paints. Messy? Real. She grinned. That night, she left another sketch on my pillow. A woman standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind behind her, a girl at her side, both of them smiling into the storm. No one tells you how sacred it feels to be someone's shelter, but I was beginning to understand, and the storm was almost behind us.
Graduation day arrived wrapped in June heat and nervous laughter. The gymnasium was packed, folding chairs, proud parents, crying siblings, teachers adjusting their ties and pretending not to care as much as they did. I sat in the front row, a little overdressed in my floral blouse and navy skirt, hands folded over my cane. Clara peeked out from behind the curtain once before the ceremony began. She spotted me instantly. I gave her a thumbs up. She didn't smile, not right away, just nodded, like we both knew how far this moment had come. Her cap was crooked, her gown slightly wrinkled, but her eyes were steady. And that was enough. When her name was called, I stood without hesitation. Others clapped politely. I clapped like thunder. She crossed the stage in slow, strong steps, held her diploma like a sword, and glanced down at me. That's when she smiled. Later, they brought out the podium for the student speakers. She was second. She walked up, not with confidence, but with truth. That kind of quiet strength that makes a room lean forward without knowing why. She unfolded a piece of paper and began. I didn't think I'd make it here. The room fell still. Grief doesn't wear a clock, and healing doesn't care about deadlines. I used to think being strong meant hiding the parts of me that were broken. But then someone very important to me, taught me that strength is what happens when you show up anyway. People nodded. A few wiped tears. This diploma isn't proof that I'm smart. It's proof that I'm still here. That love, when given with enough patience and enough fire, can pull someone out of the dark. She paused, eyes on me. I dedicate this to my grandmother, Ellen Park, who never let me forget that I was still capable of more, even when I couldn't see it myself. She fought for me when others gave up. She reminded me that art isn't a backup plan. It's a language for the things we're too scared to say out loud. I didn't cry then, not because I wasn't moved, but because something deeper was happening, something sacred. Watching her speak felt like watching a prophecy unfold, not about glory, but about survival. The kind of survival that demands beauty as proof. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People rose. Teachers clapped harder than I thought possible. And I sat there, completely still, letting the moment wrap itself around me like a second skin. Later, she came running toward me, diploma in hand. Did I do okay? I laughed. You made a room full of strangers believe in hope. I'd say that's better than okay. She leaned into me, forehead pressed to mine. I couldn't have done it without you. I closed my eyes. You did it because of you. I just held the flashlight. And in that moment, we both knew we'd made it through the storm together.
Summer stretched ahead of us like an open road. Clara painted more than ever. The living room became her studio, and I didn't mind stepping over canvases or tripping on brushes. Creation had its own kind of clutter. And after years of empty silences, the mess felt like music. One morning, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. It was from Langdon. Inside, a welcome packet, housing details, and a handwritten note from Dean Dela Cruz himself. We look forward to watching Clara grow, not just as an artist, but as a force. Clara folded the note carefully and placed it in her sketchbook. She didn't say anything, but I caught her tracing the words with her finger later, as if committing them to memory. We started preparing for her move-in August. I made lists in my notebook: linens, dishes, notebooks, extra pencils, a kettle. I wanted her to have everything. I knew I couldn't go with her, so I tried to pack parts of home into boxes. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch sipping lemonade, Clara turned to me. "Grandma?" "Yes, love." "Are you gonna be okay without me?" I looked at her,
taller now, more sure of herself. The girl who once cried under blankets after nightmares now looked ready to chase the world. I've lived a lot of years without knowing what joy really was, I said. Then you were born, and I learned. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm scared, she whispered. So was I. When they put you in my arms the day of the funeral, I thought, I can't do this. I'm too old, too tired. But look at us. She chuckled softly. We survived. No, I corrected gently. We created. We sat in silence for a while. The wind moved through the trees like a lullaby. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower buzzed. A car door slammed. Life continued. That night, I wrote her a letter. Not to give now, but for her first night in the dorm. It said, Dear Clara, you are the most extraordinary thing I've ever helped grow. I won't be there to remind you to eat or to chase your dreams or to sleep when you're tired. So I'm telling you now, don't shrink to make others comfortable. Don't dull your shine because someone calls it unrealistic. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be radiant. Love always, Grandma. I sealed it with trembling hands, tucked it in the pocket of the jacket she planned to take with her. She'd find it when she needed it most. That's how love works when it's real. It arrives even when you didn't know you were calling. And though I wouldn't be walking beside her every day now, I had built enough light in her to last the miles ahead.
We left before dawn. Clara insisted on driving, said it made her feel more in control. I let her, even though watching her navigate the freeway with one hand on the wheel and the other fiddling with the radio nearly gave me a heart attack. The car was packed to the roof. Art supplies, notebooks, a tin of cookies I'd baked the night before. Her sketch of the woman and the girl in the storm taped to the dashboard, fluttering every time the AC kicked in. She was quiet most of the ride. I didn't press. Some things grow better in silence. Langdon's campus appeared like a dream. Brick buildings bathed in morning light, students already buzzing around with lanyards and coffee cups. I watched her eyes widen as we pulled in. "This is real," she whispered. I smiled. It always was. We found her dorm, room 214. Small, clean, full of potential. She unpacked quickly, moving like she was afraid if she slowed down, she might feel too much. I helped where I could, hung her jacket in the closet, slipped the letter in its pocket, made her bed the way she liked, tight corners, pillow fluffed. Then I stood at the door while she placed her last canvas on the windowsill. A girl appeared in the hallway, introduced herself as Marcy, her roommate, talked fast, smiled wide. Clara smiled back, unsure but willing. She was ready, and I wasn't. We hugged at the door. I held on longer than I should have. She didn't pull away. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said into my shoulder. I pulled back and cupped her face. "You don't have to know. You just have to begin." She nodded, blinking back tears. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She kissed my hand,
right there in front of her roommate in the hallway of her new life. She said, "I'll call you." "I'll be here," I replied, "always." And then I left. I walked to the car slowly, sat behind the wheel, took a deep breath, and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I had done it. I had raised a child through grief and silence and doubt and whispered promises, and now she was out in the world, wild and brilliant and beautifully unfinished. Back home, the house felt too still, too quiet. But when I walked into the living room, I found something on the table, a new sketch. 2 figures holding hands under a sky full of stars. On the bottom corner, in her handwriting, "We made it because of you." I pinned it above the mantel, and as I stood there, heart full, I knew this chapter was ending, but not our story. Because love doesn't end when they leave home, it just changes form. And now it was her turn to write the next pages.
If this story touched your heart, if you've ever believed in someone when no one else did, or been saved by a quiet kind of love, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories waiting for you.